So we've now seen knowledge sharing or heard about knowledge sharing and collaboration, and that's really building the foundation of the PCI community. Now we're going to shift to see how that vision of collaboration translates into action. Up next, we're going to hear from Deanne Zettler, our head of product and technology. In her session, she is going to walk us through PCI SSE's transformation into a dynamic product-led organization. She'll share how our new product framework brings this strategic vision to life. And it's really about putting stakeholders, all of you in this audience, at the center of what we're doing and redefining how you engage with PCI SSE. Please welcome my colleague, Deanne Zettler.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Deanne Zettler, the head of product and technology. And at this time last year in 2024, I first introduced our vision to transition PCI into a product-centric organization. So today, a year later, I'm excited to share how we're transitioning into a product framework that's designed to provide higher value to the payment community. All right, so I'd like to have some fun with this with all of you today. As we start talking about how the PCI framework was designed, it actually reminds me of when my kids were young, and namely their passion for Legos. Now, my kids are older. They're both in college. There's not a lot of Legos around the house anymore. But I fondly remember they absolutely loved playing with their Legos, and they were so excited when they got a new Lego set to build. However, when they got that box opened and they poured all the pieces on the ground, it was hard to imagine how do all those pieces fit together to form that structure on the box. However, when they took the time to carefully construct those pieces, leveraging the guidance that came, the instructions that came in the box, those Legos came to life into something of more value, such as an airplane that they can imagine was soaring through space, or even a car that somehow was racing that airplane in outer space. But ultimately, all the pieces put together became something of higher value than those pieces that came out of the box. Now, at PCI, when you look at our publications independently, it might look like a long inventory of pieces that might be difficult to apply. However, when you start connecting our publications, for example, our standard with a program guide, with a reporting template, that develops more comprehensive value. So think of this as part of your back pocket of when we're describing what our product family and how it was designed. Now, PCI provides value to the payment industry through our mission, and that's to help secure payment data globally. So how do we do that? Well, namely, that's through our standards. Our standards are our flagship product. So as a standards organization, that's exactly what we do. We're developing and managing payment security standards. But the Council also provides what we call augmented products to help put those standards in use. So for example, we have our qualification programs for security professionals and organizations aligned to our standards. We also provide listings of our products and solutions that meet our standard requirements and also the program requirements as well. We also provide training and testing to qualify our security professionals and organizations. As you probably saw this year, we provide a lot of guidance documents, right, to provide supplemental information, and then also reporting templates and other supporting documents to help put the standards in use. So what is most impactful, I would say, is that we look at the quality of our programs, right, making sure that we're focusing on our assessor quality management and then also our lab programs as well. Now, what I want to highlight is that it's the combined value of all of these products working together, right, that provides the most comprehensive value to the payment industry. And that is why we're moving forward with our product family framework. Now, today, I'd like to introduce 7 product families that are providing a strategic framework for the future of our standards portfolio. That includes data and environment, mobile, device, P2PE, key management, software, and card. Now, these product families include all of the 15 standards that we have in use today, and they also support a forward-looking standard strategy. They ultimately provide a path in terms of how we're going to consolidate and realign our standards in the future, as we discussed in the 2024 community meeting. Now, these product families also include what we call our augmented products that we just described, right? And they help put those standards in use. So you can think of these product families as mini Lego sets that snap together, right, to provide more value. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the pieces that are comprised within our product family. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that our product families are comprised of our standards and our supporting programs. So let's apply the framework, starting with our standards. At the top of the screen, you can see how we have all 15 of our standards mapped into the product families. You can also see that the standards are represented in different time frames. So for example, we have our baseline standards within 2024. We also have Horizon 2, which is where we're looking to evolve our standards within the next 1 to 4 years. And then we also have these target state areas, which is really providing that North Star in terms of where we're heading with our standards portfolio. So ultimately, you can see that the product families is providing visibility in terms of how we're going to be consolidating, potentially realigning our standards into the future. All right, so let's now add those augmented products we talked about earlier. Now, the programs are broken down into components that are supporting our standard evolution. So again, that includes things such as our qualification programs, right? Our listing program readiness, again, both from an assessor perspective and from a lab management perspective. And of course, our training programs as well, to provide insight towards what is actually changing as part of our standards and our family evolution. Now, as part of our go-to-market planning, we're not just focusing on the standard publication. Our end-to-end product delivery is also looking at all of those program elements that need to be prepared in conjunction with the standard. Now, our goal is for all of our product components to be released at the same time, or at least as close as possible to when that standard's being released, to provide that comprehensive value to the payment industry and ultimately reduce that delivery risk. Now, as we take a step back, this might be one of the busiest slides you see throughout the week, but I want to just note that it provides a framework that demonstrates how the PCI publications, or all of the pieces, fit together, just like the Lego sets we talked about a little bit earlier. So now that we've introduced our product framework, we introduced our 7 product families, I want to spend a little bit of time talking through a major input into our product family design, and that's our target state standards roadmap. So you can think about this as our master Lego building plan, and we're going to take a look at those building instructions next. Now, at the 2024 community meeting, Andrew Jemison presented how all of our standards work together, and he also provided insight towards the future target areas that we're talking about today. Now, today, again, I want to emphasize we're staying true to that strategy. And what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time taking all of us through the journey in terms of how we got there. So on the screen here, again, you can see all of the 15 standards that we have in use today. They cover a lot of ground, but there is some duplication, which is causing some complexity. Now, the Council has plans to consolidate and realign our standards. And again, this is to ensure consistency, reduce that duplication as much as possible, and then most importantly, to meet the future needs in payment security. All right, so as we think about the future in payment security, there are these target areas that we're expecting to evolve our standards into a future security framework. These target areas are ultimately providing the North Star in terms of where we're heading with our standards portfolio in the future. So our focus now is looking at how do we evolve and build a roadmap from where we were as our baseline in 2024 into these target state areas in the future. So this roadmap, as you can see on the middle of the slide, includes a number of change. That's a series of future revisions of our standards. It includes new standards that we're going to be introducing or new modules that we're adding to existing standards. And then it also includes where we're going to be potentially consolidating or retiring some of the existing standards that we have today. So if we look at some of the new standards that we're looking to introduce, those are highlighted in purple on the screen. You can see that we're going to be introducing a new key management operations, or a KMO standard. In addition, we're also focusing on potentially looking at an environmental security standard. That would be really addressing the future of DSS, and Candace is going to talk a little bit more about that later today. Now, we've also added modules to some of our existing standards as well. So you can see that we added third-party apps to our PTS POI version 7 standard that was released earlier this year. And then we're also adding an SDK into our secure software standard. Now, as we look to consolidate and realign some of the standards that may be retired, maybe PCI PIN by example, because we're looking to fully integrate that standard into our KMO standard. And then staying consistent, our 3DS SDK standard would also be retired as it's integrated into secure software. So this is just an example in terms of how our standards portfolio is evolving, and we're providing that level of transparency in terms of where we're heading into the future. Now, to put this on a time scale, you can see that we've had 2 standard revisions that were published earlier this year. So that was PTS POI version 7, and then we also had our P2P version 3.2 release. Looking into 2026, we have another 4 standards that are planned for revision or launch, which would be our KMO standard. And that's in our device, software, P2PE, and key management product families. Now, a roadmap demonstrates a plan, right? And plans can change over time, especially when we're trying to pace, in terms of how fast we're going or, where we may need to slow down with publishing our standards. But in the spirit of transparency, this is the first time that the council is being forward-looking and sharing our roadmap in terms of where we're heading, what our plan looks like for 2026 into these future target areas. So as we look to the future, we cannot do this without you. The wider payment industry that's really helping to inform our roadmap, right, and also the evolution of our standards, and that's through our RFC process that we have today. Now, in addition to our RFC process, we also have a number of stakeholder engagement groups that we've been continuing to work with. So, for example, we have our board of advisors, right? As we mentioned earlier today, board of advisors has the ability to vote on new standards and also on major revisions of standards as well. We also work with our technology guidance group, and they do just that. They provide us guidance throughout the evolution of our standards development, providing some regular feedback along the way. We also work very closely with our Global Executive Assessor Roundtable, or the GEAR. The GEAR gives us perspective in terms of what's happening on the ground, what's happening with the assessments, what are the risks that we should be aware of, where do we need more clarity on different items. We also work with our regional engagement boards as well, and those boards are giving us perspective from a global, where they are in the world in terms of things that we should be considered as part of our standard evolution. So this engagement is all in addition to the various levels of participating organizations that are engaging as part of our RFC process today. Now, in fact, I'm really excited to share this was a record-setting year in terms of the number of stakeholder engagement points that we had. And that was through, obviously, our RFC process, through working with our stakeholder engagement groups, through different types of meetings that we have with them. And then we also have introduced collaboration tools, so we have more regular interaction as we're thinking through change and getting feedback along the way. So as you can see, stakeholder centricity is an essential part of our product vision. Now, to bring the product vision to life, the council has employed new roles, and that is our product management roles here at PCI. So today I'd like to introduce our product managers, which are Candace Young, Alex Epileo, who's relatively new to the council, Jake Marcinko, and then we also have Mike Thompson, who's playing a dual role as a standards engineer. This team is driving the product mindset across the council, and that's to ensure we're very focused on the value of our product families, making sure that we're understanding stakeholder needs as we're evolving our standards portfolio and our supporting programs, and again, driving that cross-functional delivery, right, to make sure that we have comprehensive release plans that are supporting that standard. So don't take it from me. I'd like to introduce the team. Let's bring out Candace Young, who's our product leader of our data and environment product family. Hi, Candace.
Hello, Deanne.
Tell us more about what's happening within the data and environment product family.
You bet. Hello, everyone. My name is Candace Young. But before I get into the data and environment product family, I'd like to share an overview of some of our cross-product family initiatives that we've been working on, some of the overarching guidance material that spans across our different products. So our goal really is to provide a singular, where possible, a singular resource for our stakeholders to be able to use and apply broadly across the products. So there's a seamless transition or a seamless resource that can pull from multiple different areas. So here are 3 examples I have on the screen, things that we've recently published. So cryptography guidance, within the last few months, we've published some content on strong cryptography and different types of methods there that can be used primarily with PCI DSS, but across our different standards. We've also released a blog post on AI principles, on what practices to employ when using agentic AI throughout your payment solutions. So that's something more broadly within the payments ecosystem. And finally, we released authentication guidance. So that was an update to the multi-factor authentication guidance that was in 2017. Primarily PCI DSS again, but certainly across our standards, you can pull information about how to support authentication methods across. As for what data and environment has been up to, well, when you think, what is data and environment security? Well, it's comprised of 3 different standards and the programs and all the training within them. So we've got PCI DSS, which protects payment account data and the environment. We've got 3DS Core, that's authenticating the cardholder before the transaction starts. And we have the token service providers. And that's about generating and issuing EMVCo tokens and protecting the environment there. So they address different parts of the payments ecosystem, but certainly there are parallels because they protect the data and the environment. One via cardholder data, one via the 3DS transaction, one via TSP. So they protect the data and the environment, and all of that together provides that data environment security product to drive that comprehensive value to our stakeholders. So certainly, overseeing all of that is something I'm very excited to do. So if there are any concerns, questions, comments about that, certainly reach out to me and we can talk about that product family. But next, the future of DSS is what I'll be speaking about after the break, and so I'll get a little bit more deeply into what Deanne mentioned about potentially the ESS there. So stay tuned for that. But next, all about mobile and device product families, I'd like to welcome to the stage Alex.
Watch me dance, dance the night away. My heart could be burning, but you won't see it.
Hi, Candace.
Hello, Alex. I know that you are one of the newest members to the council, and it's actually your 2nd time presenting on a big stage. We are very happy to have you on the product team with us. I know maybe you didn't know this about Alex, but I'd like to share. She most recently completed the Sydney Marathon, and she's actually on her way to completing all of the world's major races. So tell us more about that, Alex.
Thank you, Candace. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm the Senior Technical Product Manager for Mobile and Device product families. Like Candace mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, I ran the Sydney Marathon. And let me tell you, it was not a very easy experience. And when I think about it, a lot of what we do here at the council is very similar to running a marathon. For those of you who are runners here, I know there are a few of you getting ready to run the Amsterdam Marathon on Sunday. So I know there are a few runners here. So you know that you can't just jump to the finish line, right? It's 26.2 miles, or the number of kilometers. When you think about it, you just don't jump to the finish line. It's step by step, one step at a time, milestone by milestone, right? You're pacing yourself and trying to get to the finish line. So it's a long process. And similar to what we do here in the council, too. Talking about my Sydney Marathon experience, there were a lot of complications with my flights. I had planned to get there, give myself enough of time to get over my jet lag and stuff, but there were delayed flights and cancellations and a lot of stuff. Whatever could go wrong went wrong. So I got there with less than 24 hours before the race. barely enough time to pick up my race bib and get ready to run. And I kind of was okay when I started running up to mile 20. And after that, for the runners who know, I hit what we call the wall. So I'm like, I don't want to run another step. I'm like, I want to go home, I want to sleep. And I'm texting my friends back in the US, right? I'm like, I want to stop. And they're like, no, 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 you got to keep going, pace yourself, slow down a little bit, you can do this, you can make it. And they kept encouraging me, and so I finally crossed the finish line, and I got my medal, right? And so when I think about what we're doing here in the council, too, a lot of times there are challenges, there are complications, things don't go as planned. But that's where we look to you guys. You are our pacers. You're the ones who tell us, hey, we need to pick up the pace, or maybe we should slow down a little bit, right? So we look to you, you're our stakeholders, to give us feedback on how we proceed, what's the next steps. And a lot of you have already been involved, right? You've been some of the technology guidance groups and other working groups that Deanne mentioned. Some of you are already involved, and you've been helping us, giving us positive feedback, and we're taking that feedback, right? We're listening to you, we're taking the feedback and feeding it into our roadmaps and milestones. So what I'm going to share with you, the updates with the mobile and device product families, none of them should really come as a surprise to you, right? You've been involved, you've been part of this right from the beginning, and we appreciate that. So just a quick update on what we're doing. With a mobile product family, so we published the MPOC 1.1 earlier this year and the program guide. We had lab trainings and test artifacts to support 1.1, and we also published the MPOC integration report. And we also conducted the SPOC and CPOC gap analysis. And what we're getting ready to do next is we are getting ready to publish the MPOC guidance document, where again, we had your feedback into the guidance document, and we are starting work on MPOC version 2.0. And we are also looking at a potential integration of SPOC and CPOC into MPOC. So that's what we have with the mobile product family. With the device product family is pretty much the same. Earlier this year, we published the PTS POI version 7 and the supporting documents like the program guide and the report templates. And what's coming up next, some of you have already participated in the technology guidance group meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, and we got a lot of positive feedback. And we've taken that feedback. So we had the MPOC, the HSM RFC2 that we've scheduled for end of this month. And we listened to you, so we've kind of extended the RFC window to 45 days because we got the feedback from you. So we are really taking all your feedback and incorporating it into our roadmaps and milestones. We are also developing the PTS lab training that we are in the process of developing. We're hoping to have that ready by end of this year. And also the PTS test artifacts. So we have a test artifact device, the actual device that we are developing that will be sent out to the labs to help with the training. So this is a lot of stuff that we've covered both in the mobile and device product family. And we have a lot of ground that we've covered, but there's a lot that's coming up ahead. So if you aren't involved already and would like to be involved, find me during the break, and we'll see how we can get you involved in a lot of these great, exciting things that we're doing in the mobile and product family. With that, I would like to invite to the stage Jake.
Flash, lights, flash,
Welcome, Jake.
lights.
Tell us a little bit about your product families.
Sure. Thank you, Alex. All right. So with that, my name is Jake Marcinko. I am the product manager for the software, key management, and card production product families. And we've been very, very busy over the course of the last, well, in 2025, but also dating back to 2024, and in at least two of these areas. As many of you know that have been involved in the software product family, we have been working since really early to 2024 on doing the first major revision to the software security framework, and that includes two standards, the Secure Software Standard and the Secure Software Lifecycle Standard. In fact, we conducted an RFC on both standards in 2025 of this year, and that was actually the second RFC for both of those standards, in addition to the two that we conducted in 2024. We are now in the final stages of preparation for publication. So we're working on the final edits, completing the reporting documentation, the attestation forms, et cetera, all of the other materials that go along with the standard. And we anticipate publication in the first half of 2026 for both of those standards. So be on the lookout for that. Something else that we've been very, very active in is, as Deanne mentioned at the beginning of this session, was the creation of the new key management standard and program. We conducted an RFC, I think, on the first version of that in June or May-June timeframe. And we are now at the point where we've taken all of that feedback and have incorporated edits into the standard for the next RFC, which we're planning on conducting probably at the end of this year. So that'll be the second RFC. And then in terms of publication, as Deanne mentioned earlier, things can change, but right now we're looking at publication for the first version of the KMO standard in the first half of 2026. And then lastly, card production. Card production has been largely in a maintenance phase for most of this year. We've been focused on minor clarifications, primarily through tech FAQ updates. However, we have been in active discussions with some of our key stakeholders to determine if there is a need and opportunity to do something bigger with card production in 2026. Don't have much to share on that yet, but I would continue to look for notices. We should have more information on what that might look like in early 2026. And with that, I am going to invite Deanne back up to the stage so she can talk about point-to-point.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deanne.
Thank you, Jake. All right, I'm going to take us home and provide an update on our P2PE product family. So this is in Mike Thompson's. He's not here today, so I'll be able to speak on his behalf. So I mentioned earlier that we published our P2PE version 3.2 standard earlier this year. That took into consideration not just the standard, but we also had 4 PROV templates that were updated. And then we also had a series of training as well. So as we look ahead, we are focusing on the next revision, or the major revision of P2PE would be 4.0. As we're planning for P2PE 4.0, one of our major objectives is to simplify the standard in the program as much as possible. So right now, as part of the key management operations standard development, we're planning to shift domain 5 from P2PE into the new key management standard. And there's also going to be additional portions of the P2PE standard that will be integrated into the KMO standard. So in terms of what to expect, we are planning to have the first RFC the first quarter of this year. Again, we're managing our dependencies really tightly with the KMO standard. The second RFC is planned for second quarter of next year, and we are planning to have that major release of P2PE 4.0 by the end of next year. All right. Now, in closing, I want to encourage all of you to continue to stay involved. And if you're not involved, please get more involved in terms of participating with PCI. And that's helping us to shape and influence the future of our product families. So you can think about it like building with Legos. The sets are never complete without the ingenuity of many builders working together. And together, we're not just assembling products, we're co-creating a living, growing Lego system for the future of payment security, one piece at a time.